Jordan, just bring people up to date on what it is you're doing.
So for the last about 6 years, I've been traveling the world and doing speaking. Some, I guess motivational speaking is part of it, but a lot of it's more about strategy for entrepreneurship, sales, venture capital, things like that. And now as you said, I'm embarking on a really massive U.S. tour, about 50 or 60 cities over the next 24 months. And I'm giving all the profits back to investors who lost money 20 years ago. So that's the story. I'm really excited about that because it's a lot of work and it makes it even that more exciting to do it. So,
Carrie?
So a lot of the discussion that we've been having today is why over the last several years there's been no criminal prosecutions of the top CEOs on Wall Street that were really held, what people think are held responsible for the financial crisis. Now, you went to jail for financial crimes and obviously paid the price for that. What's your take on that? Banks are paying huge fines, multi-billion-dollar fines on these things, but we're still not seeing criminal prosecutions. So where do you see that?
I think that the problem is a lot of the laws that were broken are in the gray and difficult to prove. So what happened basically is there was this incestuous relation between the government and Wall Street, where people that were in Wall Street went to the public sector. They changed the rules and allowed these loopholes, which then people on Wall Street jumped through. So while there was certainly some illegal acts, a lot of what happened was really more about taking advantage of loopholes. So it's in the gray. There was some crimes committed for sure, but it's very difficult to prove. So I think the government, rightfully so, has to sort of pick their spots, and they don't want to fight losing cases, and they're probably doing the best they can. Could they do better? Yeah. Should some people go to jail? I'm sure. But again, a lot of those cases are very difficult to prove on a criminal level, and the burden of proof on a civil case is much easier. So what you see is the bias towards bringing these civil cases with large fines versus wasting resources on criminal cases.
You mentioned going to jail. You spent 22 months in prison for your actions. You have spoken about reform for yourself. I'm wondering if you can just give us some thoughts as to what that was like and what did you decide was a good way to reform yourself?
My path was different than most because what happened was, if you saw the movie or read the book, I had this massive drug addiction. And I wouldn't say the drugs caused the activities that happened on Wall Street. That was really a descent, slowly, step by step, fueled by greed and so forth, where I started off doing things right and then started breaking the law with stock manipulation. When I got sober, I looked back and was kind of freaked out at some of the things I'd done because now I started getting perspective. And then I got indicted a year later. When I went to jail, that was certainly, a point where you get to examine your past. But then I started writing a book. And when you write, it's almost like this advanced form of hypertherapy where you get to re-examine your actions from above and you peel back the layers and look at your motivations and what was driving you and the good, the bad, the ugly, the insecurities. And I was able to get a wholly different perspective on myself. And when I left jail, emerged from jail, and was finishing writing this book, I was already at the point where I knew I would never, ever do anything again that was even in the gray. I knew in my heart. I was raised by a great family. I didn't go out into the world to commit any crimes or fraud. It was sort of a kind of a left turn to Albuquerque. So it was easy for me to come back to the person that I originally was.
Was there a tipping point? Because as you said, you didn't start out wanting to commit fraud.
Sure.
But was there a point that you can recall that was that left turn to Albuquerque?
There was. It started with one gigantic rationalization that it was okay to take a bag of cash for someone to hide a trade that didn't make sense on paper. And they were saying, oh, everyone on Wall Street does. And it was an older person who was around for many years. And I think, in my heart, it's many years, like 28 years ago, I knew it was wrong and I shouldn't have done it. But I said, you know what, I'll never do it again. But once you take that first step over the ethical line, what happens is your ethical line moves. And then you're doing things right again, but next time you step over, you step a bit further still because you've become desensitized. The next time, further still, and before you know it, through these tiny, almost imperceptible steps, you're doing things you thought you'd never do. You're associating with people you never thought you'd associate with, and it all seems okay. So that was that first point. And then there was a point when I realized that things had spiraled so far out of control. And at that point, almost it got away from me. The firm was massive. It was thousands of people. The movie's fictionalized. I left the firm in the end of '93, and I lost control of it. And it doesn't mean I'm not responsible, I'm the first person to take responsibility, but you get in this, and you get so deep in something sometimes that the abnormal seems normal, and the normal seems like a distant memory. That's really what happened.